Hello, and welcome to episode 134, the PR Essential Summit Recession Proof Your Communications Plan.
Welcome to the PR Playbook Podcast, the only podcast giving you actionable skills and advice you need to execute a strategic PR program. Warning: what you hear next may lead to brand awareness and increased sales and customer exposure. Now here's your host, Rinjini Joshua.
Hi there. Before we jump into it, this is another session from our PR Essential Summit. And it's probably more apparent now than ever that recession proofing your communications plan is important. While you can't predict everything that's going to happen, I think there is a way that we kind of talk about in this discussion of really kind of covering all your bases and making sure that whatever plan you do come up with is dynamic and nimble. And I think that's just part of working with startups as we do at the Silver Telegram. So join us here for this discussion on recession proofing your communications plan, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks. Hello, this is Ranjini Joshua. I'm the CEO and founder of the Silver Telegram. Today, I am hanging out here with Kelsey, is it Shumway, right? Shumway, Director of Sales and Strategy at Repurpose House, a lovely partner of ours and a company that does a lot of awesome things. So I want to talk about recession proofing your communications plan. And a lot of people, we had these conversations in a couple of webinars today about how when you get into a recession or people are trying to save money, the first thing you do is like tighten up your budget on marketing and PR. And that's like the first thing to go. But I think one of the things that is really important to remember is if you disappear from like brand visibility, then you don't exist. so
Right.
so you
Yeah.
can't necessarily disappear, but there are ways for you to optimize your content, do more with what you create. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. I mean, that's like essentially Repurpose House. So why don't you give a quick introduction, Kelsey, of yourself and what you do?
Yeah. To introduce myself, my name's Kelsey. I am Repurpose House's Director of Sales and Strategy. So really my main goal is to help clients show up better on social media and help them get better performance out of the content they've created in the past. So often I meet with people who say, I've got this library that I'm just kind of sitting on top of, and it's theoretically collecting dust, right? Because if we're not getting more eyes on it, you've invested all this time and money creating these assets that are just kind of waiting to be seen again. So what Repurpose House does, we go through all of that content for our clients. We pick the best parts and we repurpose those assets for social media, help them perform a little bit better so that we can get better traction, better engagement, and help you achieve your goals.
Yeah, no, you've done that a lot.
Thank you.
We have a lot of content. We produce a lot of content, and that's one of the things is like I hate when things are sitting and getting dust on them. One of the questions that just came up with from me as you were speaking was, what about timeliness? Like you had mentioned, like, yeah, you have a library of content, but how long is that library valid? Like, if you're using it for social, you want it to be, especially in the PR side, we want
Yeah.
everything to be timely. How long is that content? Like, what is the shelf life?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. We typically see when you create content, share it currently, the average of lifespan you get across all socials is about 3 hours. And then it kind of goes to die, right? It doesn't, if we're not constantly routing people back to it, nobody sees it. We don't get further engagement on that. And that's not valuable for content that you're creating that's evergreen. So understanding that a lot of content is timely and needs to be shared immediately, or it's relevant to a conversation that's happening currently. One of the best ways I see people take advantage of that is through keywords and hashtag research, taking advantage of conversations that are already happening or hashtags that are really topical at the moment or trending at the moment, which there's a lot of different softwares that can show you what those are, is monstrous to do, right? But for other people who are creating content that's kind of evergreen, there's never a bad time to share that. There's never a bad time to have it repurposed, get more eyes on it, and help kind of continually bring more people from social to your site, help achieve those goals like lead generation, further conversations with audience members, all of that great stuff.
Yeah. And so you're mentioning social. Do you guys I feel like you also do an email, like, newsletters and things like that. You
Yeah.
create all kinds of content, right? Um,
We create new video assets out of video, audio, or text content. So anything that you're creating, we can repurpose.
so, like, let's say I give you a case study. What is the
Yes.
average number of times you can reuse that?
That's a great question. If you were to give me a case study, I'd imagine, and again, it's all dependent on
Yeah.
how long that case study is, but the likelihood is that I could probably create weeks worth of content from that one thing, right? Because I myself can go through, create new video assets out of that. On your end, if you wanted to repurpose into blogs or into a podcast episode, all of those testimonials are one of the most underrated and underutilized pieces of content to repurpose that I personally work with. There's nothing better to showcase what your clients have to say, the results you've been able to generate, and to not utilize that is such a missed opportunity. So case study specific, I love to work with. Those should be sent out in email blasts. I'll create assets for you to do that. Those should be shared all across your socials. We can create assets to do that. More so, you could utilize it in a full marketing pitch to do more podcast episodes regarding what you've been able to do. You can do blogs, all of that great stuff.
Yeah, and from a PR perspective, we can use them for press releases, contributed bylines, like, yeah, there's, like and so, on top of the 10 things that you just mentioned, you can also do, like, 5 other PR activities with that too.
Exactly.
One of the questions that I just had oh my goodness, I hope I didn't lose it. You were mentioning customer case studies. Oh goodness, I think I did lose it. We may have to come back to that. But yeah, there's just so many different ways that you can leverage this content, and I think
Yeah.
one of the things that I was just concerned with was like the shelf life and making sure it's not like
Right.
dead content or
Right.
not timely enough. Is there anything else to consider when let's say you're making content for the first time? Maybe it's you're not repurposing content that
Sure.
exists, but like creating new stuff. What should somebody be like considering when they're putting their time and effort into something new?
That's a great question. And I kind of want to route this answer back to what you had said previously, because so many people should be creating content right now, especially with intentions of recession proofing their business, right? You mentioned earlier when we were talking about how not creating content or not showing up on social right now leaves this empty hole in the market. And you've got to think that if you're thinking of scaling back on your marketing and you're thinking of scaling back on the content creation, your competition is also doing it. The people who are in the same space and wanting to kind of get in front of your audience is also thinking of that. So in terms of creating content to recession proof your business, there's literally no better time to do so because your competition is also thinking it's a good time to scale back, and it's not, because now we're leaving a monstrous hole when we could
Yeah.
be taking advantage of all those things. So for people who are wanting to start creating content right now, one of the most important things one of the best places I could suggest you start is to start answering the questions your clients or your audience members are coming to you with immediately. So a lot of the times, even taking those frequently asked questions you host on your website and creating quick video clips, answering those yourself is such great social content. Not a lot of people do that, and they just let their frequently asked questions exist on their site. It's great content. People want those answers. So I would start there. I would also start paying attention to trends and how your business can kind of affect those trends, how you can take advantage of conversations that are happening on social. I'd create content on those topics. I would, again, search for keywords and hashtags that would help me be more relevant in that space or show up better for those conversations. And I would start there. That's what I would suggest.
So everything you just said, I feel like I support you.
Yep.
However, if I'm a startup, all I'm thinking is, oh my God, I don't have the time to do that. I don't have
Yep.
the resources. And
Right.
so obviously we can hire an agency, you can do that stuff, but that's money, right?
Sure.
So I think from a perspective of being resourceful and starting small, like
Yeah.
what do you think is maybe the most important thing that you can do that's simple, whether it's 15 minutes a day, which I don't think anything is 15 minutes a day, but you know what I mean? Like what is what kind of thing that sounds like manageable? Because everything
Yeah.
you said, like I said, it just to me, if I'm a startup, I can just see that the teams are going to be like, well, I don't have time to make a video. I don't have
Right.
time to listen to social. Like, how can you make that stuff easier? Are there tools or anything else that we can use?
That's a great question. So I think what I would suggest to somebody who talked or who's had those thought
Concern.
processes would be to create some video content. Take 20 minutes out of your day and just kind of have like a thought flow through a video piece of content. So I suggest video because video performs 1200% better than standalone images do on social. So to not be creating video, especially in a world that is shifting so much to a video heavy focus, is missed opportunity. My suggestion would be and I have clients who do this incredibly well, but basically I would take my iPhone or whatever smartphone I have. I'd make sure that in my settings, my video quality is all the way up, because on social, and as I'm sure as you know, in PR, when we want to share these assets with news outlets or anyone, they want high quality video. So that would be where I would start. I would just kind of do a thought flow in the sense of like, here's what I'm noticing trend wise. Here's how I'm taking advantage of X, Y, and Z. Here are the questions I'm answering for clients day in and day out. I would create that monstrous video. And then ultimately, I'd probably have that be about 10 minutes. And then I would either myself or have my team go through and just say, how do I clip very quick 1 minute clips out of what I said? How do I clip that together? There's a couple apps like CapCut that allow you to do that in minutes and add captions to it, which is super helpful in terms of performance too. I would start there. Creating video content is really, I think, one of the best action items you could start doing immediately.
And where would you post it? Like, what are
Yeah.
like the platforms that are really performing? And like, maybe you could give us, I know you know all the platforms. So like, maybe you could give us for like which kinds of companies perform best on which platforms. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say LinkedIn for enterprise, but
Yeah.
you tell us like, what is it? What are you seeing as far as trends go? What's growing? What's becoming? What is it called? Irrelevant? That kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, good question. It's the long answer is the most beneficial thing you can do is be omnipresent across all of these channels, because you
Oh
never
God.
get where your audience is going to show up, right? So I know that's not the answer you're looking for. To be more specific,
Yeah.
the platforms that I'm seeing get great engagement, regardless of the industry you're in, whether that be doctors, lawyers, content creators, business coaches. I'm seeing Instagram Reels is doing incredibly well. I'm seeing businesses do incredibly well on TikTok too, because their algorithm is so specific. It allows people who are searching for your content to find you pretty easily. I'm also seeing great results on YouTube Shorts, which is kind of a new
Oh,
rollout. Yeah, it's something
I've
that
been watching them recently, and
yeah,
I'm like, what is this?
yeah,
At first, I thought it was like TikTok appearing on YouTube.
it kind of is a little bit. It's
It kind of looks like that,
yeah,
and so I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So it is, I like it's a whole YouTube thing.
yeah.
Okay.
YouTube now has rolled out the ability to share 1 minute clips. That's what YouTube Shorts is. So whenever you're recording yourself, I always suggest vertical, because those are the platforms that are performing best. So Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts all prefer that vertical version. That's kind of the way of the content world these days anyways. So it's helpful to just kind of create it that way.
It's so funny. It's so different because I remember like maybe a year ago, everyone's like, make sure you take a horizontal video because that's like the video format,
Yeah,
right? Like it's a
right.
normal video format.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, and then they post it natively to Instagram or they post it to LinkedIn, and then it's zoomed in and
Doesn't
it
look
looks like
right.
that. It
Yeah.
changes the entire quality. So just do it in the way that the platforms prefer, and then you're golden.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also like I sometimes I like just do both just in case
Yep,
because you never
not a
know.
bad idea. Totally.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're covering so many different areas here, and you're mentioning the platforms, Instagram Reels, you said TikTok, YouTube Shorts. What about for enterprise? Like, what about for companies that are really like trying to get brand visibility within, business and
Yeah,
investors and things like that? I mean, are you seeing a lot of social adoption there? Are they doing enough? Like, what's happening?
I'd say historically and typically, no, there's not enough content creation happening, because so much of the world now, regardless of what content it is that you're creating, being present and showing up consistently on social media not only impacts your social results, it also impacts your audience availability or viewability. To not show up constantly and stay constantly in front of them is a massive missed opportunity. I do see great results on LinkedIn still. We constantly see that. We're also creating content for people to continuously show up there. My suggestion is just to show up, right? Whether that be on LinkedIn, whether it be kind of on these new social platforms, throw stuff at the wall. That's what marketing is, right? Let's see what is and is not working. It's a very cost-effective way to stay in front of people and get some good engagement without needing to break the bank on paid ads.
Yeah. I think again, this is like the whole concept and idea of showing up
Mhm.
is really, really important. A lot of times we have companies and they come to us and they'll be like, okay, well, we like to do a project. And I'm happy to do a project for
Yeah.
anybody. But my concern is always at the end of the project, okay, now what are you gonna do? What is the
Mm.
follow-up? Because even if you don't work with us, you've got to do something. That's always a big concern of mine. Like a lot of times, like we worked a lot in crowdfunding. Let's just say like
Okay.
you're doing a Kickstarter campaign or something like that. And then all of a sudden the crowdfunding campaign's over. Your media relations push is over. And now you're like quiet until you're coming to
Yep.
market. And then
Yep.
all of a sudden, all the people that thought you were like starting something new, you disappear. And then you
Yes.
don't come back until
Mhm.
like 8 months later when you're ready to like launch again. And they're like, wait, where have you been for the last 8 months? It's like missing a
Right.
friend. Like what
No,
happened?
it totally is. And you're not only talking about losing the traction you're getting with an audience, which needs to be built when you're bringing that to market. When you stop posting consistently on social media, you also lose the traction that the algorithm sees as you being a constant user or as an effective user. And
Mm,
when that happens, it takes so long to rebuild the preferential treatment you get on these social algorithms when you're posting consistently. And to take it even a step further, when you're posting video content consistently. So
interesting.
it doesn't just harm you in the market in the sense of viewership or an audience to actually market to. It kind of sets you back in multiple ways, and it's not great.
What does that look like? Like, how long does it take to I know, we were having a conversation about SEO, and it takes about 3 to 6 months to really build solid SEO. What would you say is the time frame that it takes to build solid brand visibility within these platforms, the social platforms, where you're, like, really optimizing your algorithm?
That's a good question. As you know, virality is somewhat random. There are such great videos that have such impactful content and nobody sees it. But if I post a photo of my dog, like that is the one thing, of course, that would go, it's random. However, what I always suggest is that if we are going to test a full rollout of organic social media to help build a brand, let's give it 4 to 5 months, is what I typically suggest, so
Mm,
that we can see when we're throwing stuff at the wall, what is and is not performing, what is and is not resonating with your audience, what platforms should we be investing most time in. There's all of these different things that we need to test kind of to get a good solid footing. And from there, ROI is a little bit clearer to read than it is when we're just getting rolling.
yeah. No, and that brings me to my next question is, like, literally what I just wrote down. What are really the metrics that you guys are watching? I mean, a like is great, but I know, like, just from posting on social media, okay, great, we get a lot of likes, but no one's commenting, no one's
Yeah.
engaging. Doesn't feel like really anyone's engaging, or
Yeah.
does that matter? Like, what is
It
the
totally
engagement?
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question because it totally does. And a lot of times you don't know where to start. So you just think, oh, great, we got 100 likes on this. This is phenomenal. But if we're not continuing the conversation with all of those people liking the content, again, it's a missed opportunity. So some of the best people I see utilizing social for good engagement and getting further results, they're including call to actions on almost every one of their posts. They're
Oh,
including
they are.
some kind of open-ended question to say, what are your thoughts on this? How have you been staying ahead of these things? Please let me know. I'm really interested in hearing from my audience or from you guys what you
Yeah.
have to say. To not force or kind of push for engagement or conversation around the topics you're moving forward with. It's a missed opportunity, one, because more people aren't commenting. You're not asking questions. This question opens up people to feel comfortable kind of responding to what you said. But
Mhm.
also, when they comment, me having a sales background, I always think you should think of the people who are commenting or messaging you as leads. They're clearly interested in what you're talking about. They clearly
Right.
want to have further conversations about it. So to not respond to them, to not DM them and say, how do we continue this conversation? I absolutely love your mentality on X, Y, and Z. When can we get a chance to chat about how I also am taking part in that? I think that's one of the best ways. Engagement is so important to have on social, and that's a great way to do so.
Do you think even if they just like your post, like what if they just saw it in the stream and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is great."
I think if you have a lot of time, yes. If
Yes.
there you have the time, Absolutely. They like your posts. I would be going to their profile, following them, liking some of their content just because I would want them to see that they're seen, right?
Yeah.
It makes you feel good when a big brand you comment on or like something, they get back to you in some kind of way. So I would love to see that. But again, be realistic with yourself. Take the time you need to actually show up, do it in an effective way where you can consistently show up like that and then go all at it.
So I'm hearing you say consistency a couple of
Yes.
different times, and I'm a part of that tribe, the consistency tribe. I love it. And what is that definite like? What does that mean for different brands? I know I've had conversations with people about posting content, the frequency of content, and do you just pick what you're capable of, or is there a
Yeah.
formula that you have that you guys know, like if you post every day, that's better? Like,
And certain social platforms love posting regularly. Certain platforms dock you if you schedule those. So it is kind of a hit or miss. The more frequently you can show up on social, the better. My suggestion as to how to do that, though, right? Because, yeah, it's a lot to just say show up daily, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, is to squeeze all the juice out of your content as possible. For me, who's in the repurposing space, where my main goal is to take your content and spread it as far and get as much juice out of it as I possibly can, I would always, if you have the option to have another set of eyes on your content, maybe having them even watch through it and waiting for them to say, "Ooh, that was a really great quote. Ooh, that was a really great point." Or even doing that yourself, maybe going back
yeah.
to content you created in the past, right? And saying, "Wow, I don't know if I've got enough eyes on that portion. Cut it up, pull it out, put it on social." Because to not use every ounce, or we think of it as like an orange, right? If
Yeah,
to
yeah,
not
yeah.
use all the juice out of it is a missed opportunity. And showing up consistently does not mean getting yourself stuck on the hamster wheel of content creation. It means creating great content that you can pull small things out of to have it to show up without having to kind of stay on that hamster wheel.
What, like, do you think is, like, uh, w I guess, what is the, like, normal like, if I'm gonna do a video or pull some audio content or something like that, what is the length of that? I mean, I know there's parameters that the social like, the different platforms
Right.
give you, but what is there, like, a sweet spot of, like, a time of content, like a minute or 3
Yeah.
minutes or whatever?
Yeah. The way of the world really is shifting to a shorter attention span. And so what we're seeing work the best is anywhere between a minute and 2 minutes. After about 2 minutes, we're seeing monstrous drop off. So I would suggest when we're creating content or when we're clipping content for this topic specifically, we're looking at creating content that's less than 2 minutes. Now, like you mentioned, there are platforms that have very specific parameters around time. YouTube Shorts, while we're talking right now at the end of 2022, is cutting us to about 1 minute. 59 seconds is kind of the max. I would suggest that I'm creating content to be visible on all platforms. I stick to that 1 minute mark because I know all of the other platforms will allow for it. YouTube Shorts is allowing for it. And since such great engagement is happening on YouTube Shorts, I would focus on the timestamp they're giving me.
Yeah, I think could you also I think from what you're saying, I would also even say, like, okay, you could post 1 minute of content, but then you can send them to the longer form content,
Yes.
right?
And that would be the call to action I would more than likely include. Let's ask
Right.
some questions in the caption. What are your thoughts? How are you doing this? X, Y, and Z. But I would also say to see more or to hear more of this conversation, come back, check us out here. Another thing I should mention here too is that platforms, when you include a link to the long form content, there's very few platforms that will actually allow you to link out to that long form, right? So here I am, I've created this really great short asset, and now I have no way to link them back to it. A good strategy for that is to include the link in maybe a link tree or some format of that in your bio on all platforms. Because now there's kind of a main hub as to where people can find all of the content that is longer form, and you're kind of getting away from what social media docks you for. When they see you including a link in the caption of your asset, they actually dock your post and they don't show it as much because I know, wild stuff. They don't show it as much because you're intending to take people away from their platform, right? Which is
Oh,
obviously
yeah.
not the goal of any of those social sites. So dropping it in a link tree where people can kind of, where you can just say, hey, to see more, link is in my bio, like everybody does. And then to have a link in your bio where all that's
Yeah.
collected. It's
What
a really
about
cool.
link in bio? Do you guys
Easy.
like Yeah.
Yep. Link in bio to find out more. Any formation of that, I would absolutely throw in a caption if there's the
Is that
availability.
true for LinkedIn also?
It's true among most sites. So LinkedIn is going through a lot of algorithm changes. I would always suggest LinkedIn's an easy one because they allow for a link out. So I would suggest LinkedIn is probably one of the only ones that you could do that. But for
Okay.
the vast majority of other platforms, I would be very specific about those things.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because they do allow it, but then they mask it with their LinkedIn, their the little LinkedIn Bitly type thing. So they
Yeah.
definitely change what it is.
They shorten the link for sure. And I forgive me, I'm not super well versed in the LinkedIn link debate, but I know for vast majority of platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, now that that's all shifting, who knows? I would stay away from that in general because I think it never looks as great when you have to copy and paste a link. It's a lot of just like random text in a caption. But I also would just avoid being docked in general.
Yeah, okay. And then for Linktree, what's too long? Like that's I've seen some link trees that have like just crazy it's a tree.
Yeah.
So what like you want to be able to give people a call to action that's going to be effective, and I think that's one of the things, when we're leveraging content in lots of different ways, the end goal typically for most of the companies that we work with is either a collaboration, an
Mhm.
investor, or sales.
Yep.
So should we just stick to those 3 call to actions, or like how do we know what is too much and what isn't?
Yeah, especially when it comes to Linktree, I would say in terms of content, this all needs to route back to your goals. Is if the goal is further conversations to generate leads and then potentially generate sales, that should be top of the Linktree, right? And you can organize that in a way. That should be number one. I would also suggest though, it's completely dependent on your goals. Like if visibility is your goals, routing other people to other social channels or suggesting that they follow you in other places, which are linked in your Linktree is also important. It's really dependent on your goals, but what I tend to see is once you need to start scrolling on the link tree, you lose people.
It's
A-
over.
And I know that that's dependent on kind of your screen size and all this other stuff, but I would keep it short to make sure that scrolling wasn't a possibility and it was very concise as to where I wanted people to go.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things is also like when you like have older posts, like, and then you say, "Oh, go to my link tree," but then it's not there anymore, or like it's like
Yeah.
you're not gonna retroactively go back and like delete or and adjust a post. I mean, that
Right.
doesn't happen. So
Right. So if the goal is like more visibility on your podcast, to not have your podcast number one is not smart. And
yeah,
secondly, to not have that link updated is also not smart. So having all of those things kind of updated, which shouldn't take any time if you're just kind of following up with the traditional standards of posting your content, I would make sure that all of that was good to go before I started routing people there.
okay. So I think we've talked a lot about formats, platforms. I mean, we talked
Yes.
a lot about a lot of things in a short amount of time here. One of the questions I had here was like, is more better? Is having more content better? And this is kind of, I guess, goes back to the idea of frequency and like how much you can leverage it. I know you said squeeze the juice as much as you can,
Yep.
but like, are you eating the rind too? Like, how much is too much? And, like, you don't want to force things down people's throats too much, but also like, like, I'm really concerned as a business. I'm so concerned about my resources in this coming year. Like what it I don't want to overdo it.
Yeah.
Is
I get it.
there a thing where you can overdo it?
Yes, right? With anything, it's possible to be inundated. However, what we see on social, to get great performance, you do need to be showing up consistently. That's just kind of the necessary evil of social media, right? Is if you want a high performing social profile, you are showing up consistently. And that's why it's so important to get as much as you possibly can out of your content. However, I also think that people as an audience, you start to feel like you're being inundated when all you're seeing from one specific brand is sales pitch, sales pitch, sales pitch, sales pitch.
Sure, sure.
Do something for me, do something for me, do something for me. When in reality, that brand is more than likely creating content to showcase great results. They're creating content that also is just kind of fun and playful because they want to continuously stay in front of their audience. And they're also creating content that's intended to be educational. So my suggestion to avoid the audience,
Burnout.
the burnout of the audience would be to share a multitude of things. It doesn't have to be heavy educational content every time. It doesn't have to be a call to action every single time. In fact, it can be, it absolutely cannot be to show up authentically on social, which is based on studies, one of the most important things people see, even when they're looking at brand social medias, to not be authentic, to not show up in ways other than sales pitches or just deep education. It is That's how we avoid those situations. I don't want your audience to burn out. I don't suggest we ever look at situations or strategy like that. And sometimes it's helpful when you see brands being super playful. One brand that does that so incredibly well is the platform that allows you to learn different languages, Duolingo. I don't know if you're
Okay.
familiar with their
Yeah.
brand.
Duolingo. Yeah.
They show up so consistently and in such a playful way that even when, you run out of frequently asked questions to create content on, to not do like a funny bit around your office or to just like kind of take advantage of those playful conversations, adding that in will definitely help avoid your audience burning out on your content.
And then, oh my gosh, I had another question that like kind of piggybacks, on this, but burnout of content. Okay, I totally forgot it. But I mean, I guess it had something to do with frequency and burnout
Yeah,
and like having a heavy sales pitch. I think just like basically everything in moderation is what you're saying.
totally. And having a diverse social feed is important in general for multiple reasons. When you have somebody coming to your social feed, and just think about how you yourself as a consumer of social media behave. That's one of the best things you can do is when you get an icky feeling when you're looking at a branding page, dive into that. Think about why, right? Is it is it feeling too forced? How do we make sure we're not showing up that way? Is it feeling too salesy? How do we make sure we're not showing up that way? The best person who's going to consume your content is you, right? You know all of it, you understand all of it. So of course getting a different lens is great, but assuming that your audience is seeing your content really knows kind of what they're looking for, thinking of all of those perspectives is important as well.
Okay, I remember my question.
Yeah.
And it was around this. It was around this.
Okay.
Like scheduled content. So like maybe I want to say like 5 years ago, if I did like a social media calendar, it would be like on Mondays we do this and on Wednesdays we do wear pink or whatever. So what is the best practice on scheduling content? Is that too predictable or is that something that's welcome? Is that good?
Yeah. I think that this is kind of a twofold answer. I think knowing what you're going to see on social when your audience is enjoying it, that's super helpful. Like I follow content creators who do specific food reviews or Sephora beauty product reviews, and knowing that those are coming like makes me excited to see those things. So I think as long as it's beneficial content to your audience and you can get people excited to constantly review those things, great. Now, a lot of the times it might not be so exciting. I know that we've talked about enterprise clients pretty often.
Yeah.
It might not be that exciting. We can't talk about Sephora beauty products, which sucks, but nonetheless, I would suggest showing up on social in a way that your audience is responding to is everything. So let's test it, right? Let's see how people are responding. If we're seeing great results, then we're seeing some drop off. Maybe let's dive back into what we were doing at the beginning where we were really garnering good interest. A lot of that is metric tracking. So I would be looking at who's watching these lives when I post them, who's engaging with this content frequently. The only way to tell what is and is not working is to look at the numbers. We can only change what we're measuring. So that's what I would suggest.
What are the most common metrics that people like that really show and display brand engagement?
That's a great question. So dependent on your goals, right? If the goal is to increase subscribers, very easy to track. If to increase engagement, that's also pretty easy to track in the sense of how is our content faring to the content we did maybe last week or the week before in terms of comments, messages, or likes compared to when we did before.
Uh-huh.
I also think it's super important to kind of tie in the question you asked me to post kind of regularly scheduled content. There are a lot of different sites that allow you to see when the social algorithm suggests you post, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of the times you've
Does
heard
that work?
it does. It
Oh.
does. And it's ever changing, which is the hard part of managing or kind of keeping an eye on. But you absolutely should be taking advantage of when the platforms are telling you most people are online, because that's the way we get more eyes on it, right? If I'm going to post an Instagram story at Sunday at 3 a.m., opposed to Sunday at 4 p.m., when everyone's kind of starting to unwind, think about cooking dinner, more than likely on their phone, I'm going to be posting at 4 p.m. all day long. I'm not up at 3 a.m., but for people who aren't creating content, it's just not a wise choice to post at those times. Now, again, that could always change. The algorithms could shift towards, an earlier morning post. But for now, what we can see is that certain times on certain platforms allow assets to perform best, because that's just when the vast majority of people are on that platform. And
I've noticed like this, they have, I mean, obviously I post on all different platforms, and like Facebook, particularly the business suite, like, gives you the recommendation of like, oh, you should post at like this time. And I always think like, really, that time? Like, it feels so, when I look at the time that they tell us, I like just feel like that's wrong.
what are your results when you do post at those times? Do you see
I,
good results?
I don't know. I guess I have to check.
That's okay. That's okay. And that's another thing to check, right? Like, just because and the algorithms and the social platforms do extensive research to be able to give you those times, right? So of course that's great. But again, it's a suggestion. So your audience might not find that valuable. So again, it's one of those things where metric tracking and trying a lot of different things is super important to do.
Well, and that's I guess that's the question I have when that they give you the schedule recommendations. Is that for your audience, or is it just for the audience for the platform?
I believe it's for the audience of the platform, but that means that the vast majority of people are on the platform. So I'd assume that the vast majority of your audience is there too.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay.
So,
And then go ahead.
yeah, no, I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to say, I'm not positive that it differs industry to industry. I would imagine more so just like time zones.
Right. What about like scheduling? So you had mentioned something about how you get like kind of docked for scheduling posts. Because we're resource strapped.
Yes.
A lot of times we are scheduling like blog posts. I mean, blog posts are different, but like social posts, blog posts, all those different things.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What does like docking you look like?
Right. I don't see a world existing when you can't schedule your posts, because it's just not feasible.
It's not
when you're
feasible to do
no,
that. Yeah.
when you're wanting to be resourceful. So what I'm seeing platforms shift to is allowing for native platform posting. So LinkedIn
Oh,
and
like versus like third party schedulers.
yes,
Okay.
if the platforms you're wanting to show up on allow for that, I would absolutely use those scheduling tools.
Yeah.
Because we don't see docking happen when we do that. A
Okay.
lot of the times you will hear, though, for other apps that allow for third party scheduling, that will not get great performance. And a lot of that is testing, which I know a lot of people don't have time for. So to avoid it, if the platform allows you to natively schedule it, do it there.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I know this is not available for everybody because I have multiple accounts on LinkedIn, and like on my LinkedIn account I can schedule stuff, but
Mhm.
on another LinkedIn account I cannot schedule stuff. Is it like a personal accounts versus business accounts, or is it just if you don't have a creator account, or like how is that working? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it's a brand new rollout. So I think that there
Yeah,
are
okay.
some accounts who have been allowed to have like kind of beta testing. I don't think it's officially out. I did read that it was a initiative that they're launching in 2023, though. So it is something
Okay.
that I think everyone can expect coming soon.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm so happy.
I know. I think a lot of the platforms will shift that way. So we think that
Yeah.
that's a big trend we'll see coming up. We're seeing a lot of trends change on social now that I think about it. With everything happening with Twitter, Twitter is now going to be allowing for 4,000 characters opposed to just the 290. So
Wow.
I'm excited to see how people
It
take
went from 140 to 290 to 4,000. That's a big huge
I
shift.
know. I could be wrong about the 290. I'm not a frequent Twitter user, but it is somewhere around there. It's increased and increased, and now it's at 4,000. I'm like,
Yeah.
people are going to be writing like full on blogs on Twitter. But I'm excited to see how that works. The social realm is so different, and it it's almost unrecognizable year over year, right? Because things just change so quickly. I think what is staying consistent in terms of trends I see in 2023 happening, I think you're going to see a lot of authenticity of big brands, which I absolutely love to see. I think it means that they're showing up in a way that people actually prefer on social, which is great. I think the way of the world is shifting towards video content. So if it's a possibility to create video content out of whatever you have, do it. Take your text, turn it into a text motion video. Take your audio, turn it into audiograms. let me help you because you need it. But ultimately, just create some video content, stay in front of the platforms, and keep showing up consistently. Those are the things that, regardless of what changes in 2023, we know because the algorithms tell us will continue to perform.
And I think that's another good point that you brought up, like text video and audiograms.
Yeah.
Those are video. Like it's
Yep.
not, yeah, your face isn't on it, but that's also still video like format. So
Exactly. Yeah. No,
yeah,
for my clients who are like adverse to video content, I always suggest just send me a voice memo then, because I can take that content and people love just kind of getting to put a human behind the experience. So a
that's right.
voice opposed to a face is fine, you know? So yeah, create that
No.
content.
Awesome. Well, I think we're coming to a close here. And I feel like if we open another can of worms, we might go for another 20 minutes. So thank you so much, Kelsey. I think this was such a great conversation about, how to really maximize content and then also how to leverage social. I think that's a
Yeah.
conversation you should have all the time. But yeah, so I mean, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll hear some more from you in the future on next wave of big trends in
Yeah.
social and content creation.
I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me.